What's going on, people? We are Tottenham TV, back here for another preview stream in anticipation for the big game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. 3 p.m. kickoff tomorrow against Wolves. And it's time to right those wrongs from earlier on this season. If you actually remember when we played Wolves earlier on in the season, it was the first game after suffering all those injuries against Chelsea. We were 1-0 up all the way till the last minute and conceding 2 goals in the space of however many minutes it was in stoppage time. And then coming into this game, again, we thought we had a fresh squad and a few injuries have come to light.
Which is frustrating because as soon as you get a few, they take a few away every single time. So it is very frustrating. I'm sure we'll get into it in the preview, but it's a blow. Don't get me wrong. These injuries, Dogi and Porro, but well, I'm sure we can deal with it.
And don't forget to mention Fraser.
Of course, Fraser Forster. What a massive blow that is. But yeah, we'll have to contend with it, won't we? Yeah. But I'm excited for this weekend. We've still got a lot of forward players available, a lot of different options. Sonny's going to be back in the lineup, and a really good chance to keep pace with the top 4.
Yeah, absolutely. But we've got quite a bit to bring you this morning or today, this afternoon. We've got a Tottenham update, the regular match preview stuff, and then we've got a special head-to-head highlight as well, which we'll get into later on in the show. But let's start off with a Tottenham update, and we're going to start off with some potential transfer news, and we're going to talk about Pedro Neto once again, as Nazar Kinsella says that Wolves want a club record fee of 60 million plus if they are going to sell Pedro Neto in the upcoming transfer window. Ange Postecoglou is a big admirer of Pedro Neto, with Spurs boss set to consider adding another forward to his squad this summer. However, a Spurs move for Neto could depend on if they activate Werner's buy option or not.
I hope it isn't dependent on that, because if it is, then it means that, and this is exactly what I was worried about in the previous update we did, that is, if we do activate Werner's buy option, are we going to consider that our main forward option addition in the summer, and we're going to justify not spending big on a forward by the fact that we're signing Werner? That can't be the case. As much as I like Werner, even if he kills it from now to the end of the season, we still need another one in addition to him as well, because we need players in the wing positions which are more kind of profile perfect for Ange Postecoglou. We know Pedro Neto is absolutely of that profile. I absolutely love Pedro Neto. I think he's an exceptional winger. Obviously, we're going to see him in the flesh on the weekend. We're going to see how much damage he's going to do. I'm sure he's going to cause us all sorts of problems. But I really hope we don't. I really hope we're not sitting here at the end of the season. Werner's had like a decent season, and we end up purchasing him because he's cheaper, rather than pushing the boat out and going for someone like Pedro Neto.
Yeah, with the price that Timo Werner is going to cost, with the clause that we have in his deal, like, there is no reason why we can't spend big on another winger as well, right? It should not be either or. It should be both or just Neto. You know what I mean? Like, it shouldn't just be. It's ridiculous to say it's either or with the price that Werner is.
I don't think it's a money thing. I think it's a numbers thing. Because if you sign Werner, then you've got Werner. You've also got Solomon still there. You've got Brian Hill is still on the books. You've got obviously Son, Richarlison, Kulusevski, Brennan Johnson. All these players, like, something's gonna have to give. You're gonna have to get rid of a few. If you're adding Werner, like, you're gonna have to get rid of a couple probably before you bring anyone else in.
Yeah, well, that's just the reality, and that's what the case should be. And if the wingers aren't suited to Ange Postecoglou's system and the profiles that he wants from a winger, then we're going to have to get rid of a few anyway. So why not bring in 2 and get rid of a few?
Yeah, but who is it? Johnson's not going anywhere. Kulusevski's not going anywhere.
Well,
Son's
Hill
not
for
going
starters.
Richarlison's not going anywhere. So that's already 4. You sign Werner, that makes it 5. You've got Solomon, who's only just come. So is he going to go anywhere? That's another one. That's already 6 there before Hill. So so that's where the issue comes. Look, for me, that's why you have to be very careful before making the Werner deal permanent. But yeah, I can understand why there's can be a few complications if Werner is brought on a permanent deal with bringing another one without someone else leaving.
If that's the case, then I'm completely against the Werner signing then, because we just need someone with a higher, someone that can fit the profile a lot better than Timo Werner. And yes, he's been all right since he's joined, but we need someone better, in my opinion.
I agree.
So that's the situation on Timo Werner. Apart from that, we've got a couple of quotes to bring you, quite a lot on Heung-min Son. But before we get into that, we've got some quotes from Timo Werner on why he joined Tottenham and chose to join Tottenham. And he says, in the end, it happened very quickly. 2 or 3 weeks earlier, Tottenham had already contacted me, but I never responded because I thought I could achieve something in Leipzig over the winter. The more the interest grew, the more often Tottenham contacted my agents. It became so interesting that in the end, I couldn't say no anymore. The fun has completely returned. I've changed a lot as a person and I'm much happier now. After just 5 games, you can tell the decision to move has paid off for me. The season is still long and I want to build on my first performance. Just the fact that I'm playing in our stadium has already made the move worthwhile. It's impressive. And he also said in that interview is how much of an influence Ange Postecoglou was on joining Tottenham. But Timo was ghosting us at first.
But obviously, he actually returned to Leipzig, but things hadn't gone to plan totally. But last season was actually not a bad season for him, like totally. He got 16 goals, got a few assists, was scoring in the Champions League. So maybe when we registered our interest, he was kind of happy at Leipzig and didn't want to go anywhere. But obviously, as the season progressed, he wasn't getting any game time. Spurs needed another body in the January window to supplement our attacking force with Son going on the Asia Cup. Maybe the stars kind of aligned a bit on that front. So he might have ghosted us at first, but as he says there, he's very happy with the choice he's made. You can see that he's looking happy at the moment. You can see how he's interacting with his teammates. In interviews, he seems very confident. He seems like I love what I'm listening to his interviews because he just seems like a very normal guy, like who's he's not very media trained in that way. Like he says and does things which are maybe the club want him to be a bit more monotone, but he's quite funny when you hear him speak in interviews and stuff. So I'm happy with him at the moment. I think he's doing a good job, and clearly he's trying to do his best to get back into that Germany squad for the Euros, whether he makes it or not, up in the air at the moment, I would say. But whether he signs permanently, that's a big decision. And even though it's not a lot of money, it's not the money that's the problem. It's just how many bodies do you want in the forward line, and it's about who we keep and who we let go and all these different things. So I like Timo. I like his personality. I like that he's coming here to prove a point, but he's still got a lot to prove.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. But, in terms of what you're saying with the numbers as well, just having a think about like Kulusevski could be considered as maybe even a central player next season. And that frees up another space in the wide areas, which leaves a spot on the right-hand side. On the left-hand side, if Brian Hill goes, that does leave another option as well. So there are kind of moving parts to it. It's not like set in stone, for sure. Mm-hmm. And we'll finish off talking about this Heung-min Son interview. I've picked out a number of quotes, but we'll go by quote. First one is him talking about Ange Postecoglou, and he says, first of all, there's a high sense of pride and confidence in the brand of football that our manager pursues. I learned tremendously from him about that passion for football and about things I learned from him as a human. I consider myself as a really lucky player because so many great managers taught me so many great things. I'm very thankful that I was able to meet another great manager, learn about his football and grow as a footballer and a person. But Ange is genuinely an amazing person. I have a very high respect for him because he wants to play his unique football in any situation and feel pride in that. Right now, our players have not perfectly accommodated to his ideas, but when we do, I'm confident that will become a much better side. And that is a really good thought, isn't it? To think like we're right now 7 points off the top of the league, 4th in the table, and we're not even like fully there yet.
Yeah, and that's what we've been saying all season. And this is what I've been saying anyway. Yes, there's been bumps in the road so far this season. There have been games where we've been battered by like the likes of Brighton and Chelsea and whatever, and we've looked lackluster in some games against likes of Wolves and a few weeks ago maybe Everton and stuff like that. But that's always going to happen at this stage. I'm just looking at how we're doing and where we are on the table and our performance level, and I'm amazed we're at this stage so quickly that we're already in a top 4 race. I expected us to be kind of out of it by this stage, to be honest. I didn't expect us to be anywhere near a top 4 race going into the season. I thought it was going to be a big struggle and it was going to be a big learning curve this season, but the fact that we're on 47 points after 24 games, we're only 7 points off the top, let alone in the top 4, is astounding. And I think that's absolutely right what Sonny's saying. Hopefully we can do something special this season. I think obviously getting close to that title is going to be beyond us, I would assume. But if we get into that top 4 or even top 3, that would be an astounding first season for Ange.
Yeah, absolutely. The next quote is of Sonny reacting to being asked, how is it being one of the older members of the squad? And he says, "It's quite sad now that you reminded me of this. Now I remember the fact that I am aging right now before training, but it is the reality. So far, I've had many experiences while being a professional footballer. I learned some fun things, good things, sad things, and many things. I grew up as a football player and as a person, so I hope that younger players feel comfortable. The players in our team are maintaining a really good atmosphere, and I don't feel like there's anything in particular that I can help with in this aspect, because the lads always put their best on the pitch. I always think about how to get the best out of these players' performances on the pitch. For this reason, I always talk a lot with the players and sometimes have deep conversations. I think this could be why we have recently seen better synergy. For sure, there are assignments for me in the future to take better care of these players, because these players are certainly playing for Tottenham with a sense of responsibility. I think it's my duty to have responsibility with these things and make a more cohesive team." And spoken like a true captain there.
Yeah, I mean, he might be one of the older members of the team, but we know he's young at heart, Sonny. He's still like a little kid on the training ground. You can see that obviously he's got that serious side to him, and we can see since he's come into that captaincy role, he's taken more of that leadership responsibility. He's taken more of that leadership role amongst the dressing room, even though he's always been a player who gets on with everyone and is making jokes to everyone. But you can see him now taking on that responsibility to make sure he's encouraging everyone, making sure that if anyone has a bad miss or has not having a great game, he's trying to get the best out of them. He's trying to lift their spirits. He's trying to not let them get too down. And that's such an impressive thing with Son. So even though he doesn't like being reminded that he is 31 and maybe getting on a bit, he still takes great care of himself. He still looks, in a really great condition, let's be honest. Obviously, maybe he's not as intense, or maybe as what I would say lightning as he was, back when he was, in his young early 20s, mid 20s.
Did you not see him skin Trippier alive?
He's still there. As I say, he still has his moments where he can skin players, and he's still got that pace to run in behind and threaten the opposition. And he's still so clever with his movement. He's still one of the best finishers in the league. So even though he's 31, I still believe he's got many years left ahead of him. And I think the players are all better for it, or the players around him. I think he's just such a positive influence in the dressing room. Everyone just has to be together when he's there. He's like, when it's like when they say when you have a family who aren't getting along, and you give them like a puppy, like everyone just can't help but like have love around that puppy. It's like that's what I feel like what Son brings. Everyone can't help but just feel love when he's around.
Absolutely. The lovable captain, that's for sure. That shows a lot of sides to himself, not just being lovable, but he's got those leadership qualities that we've been missing for quite a while here at Tottenham. So it's great to see. This is a funny quote, him talking about Radu Dragushin, and he says, "I was a bit scared of him at first because he's so big, and we talked a few times, and he's really kind and super talented. I'm an attacker and he's a defender, so I wish we can talk more about how we could cause more problems to attackers on the pitch." So Sonny was a bit scared of Dragushin when he came to meet him.
I'm not surprised. I think I'm scared of Dragushin. Look at him; he's an absolute unit. I think if he was walking on the street, you'd definitely cross the road. You don't want to bump into him, honestly. But yeah, look, I'm delighted he's one of us instead of one of the opposition. That's the main thing.
And last but not least, we're going to talk about Sonny talking about that fan reception when he came back after the Korea at the Asia Cup with Korea, and he said, I would love to say a thank you. It's a huge honor to get a reception like that. Toughest week of my life, but you all made me very happy again, lifted me up, and I'll never forget this moment. And you saw those clips of him returning to Tottenham. It wasn't the usual Sonny, usually smiley, happy Sonny. You could see something had happened out there in the Asia Cup. But since he's come on, since he got that assist, you're seeing that smiley character around the training ground again, aren't you?
Yeah, he seems like he's back to it now. You saw around the what's it called, the open training session, he was having jokes with everyone, a lot of banter, a lot of happy selfies with the fans and everything. He did seem back to his old self. It was quite interesting. Reportedly, the Spurs press refused to allow any questions about what happened in the Asia Cup, after all the media leaks with Lee Kang-in and all these different things. That's how he got his dislocated fingers. And I think that's a smart move. that's what Spurs did. Instead of, feed into any of that stuff and cause more negativity and maybe even, pull Son from the open training session because maybe reporters are going to be asking him about that or anything like that. They just refused to let anyone ask about it. They just posted positive content about him, and they protected Sonny from what could have been an even worse week for him with all those stories breaking. So that was really, really great. And the reception he got from the fans I thought was fantastic. You saw even when he was warming up, everyone was getting so excited to get him on the pitch. And then once, obviously, he comes on and Romero's giving him the armband, and there's a massive roar from the crowd, and he's cheering up the crowd. He's, we just equalised, and he's trying to get everyone going. It was a special moment, and obviously, I'm sure he said it in that interview. It's something he'll never forget for the rest of his life. And in those tough moments, I'm just glad that the Spurs fans gave him a reception to remember, because it must have been a very tough week for him. And hopefully now he's back at Spurs, we can have a really positive end to the season, and hopefully he can be central to it.
Absolutely. Big up, Sonny. Great to have you back. And that cheer when he came on was literally like a goal had been scored. That's how loud it was. Yeah. It was unbelievable. But we're going to finish off talking about the injury news going into this weekend. As Ange says in the press conference, Pedro Porro picked up a strain at training. Probably could be a couple weeks for him. Destiny Udogie picked up a knock. Not too serious. The game next weekend, he should be back. Although we don't play next weekend, it's the weekend after. And Fraser Forster has a fracture in his foot, which will leave him out for a couple of months. So in terms of the Porro and Udogie news, hopefully it's just one game they miss.
Yeah, obviously it may works in our favour probably that Chelsea game was delayed because of these injuries now. Obviously,
Agent Poch.
Yeah, when you look at these fullback options we have now, from going from Porro and Udogie to Davis and Emerson's obviously a massive drop-off. There's no two ways about it in terms of their quality on the ball, in terms of how effective that Emerson's maybe not massive drop-off defensively compared to Porro, you can argue, but I think Davis and Udogie, Pedro Neto is definitely going to be licking his lips a bit compared to maybe facing Udogie. He's going to be looking at Davis thinking, I can definitely get him behind him. So that's a bit of a worry. Obviously, there's a lot of fans saying, should we move Van de Ven to left back, put Dragoshin in? I think there's a good argument for it, but what I would say is, in the open training session yesterday, it was very clear that he was practicing with Emerson and Davis in the back line. So I do think that is going to be what's happening tomorrow. Will it be a case where it makes such a difference to us that we're all of a sudden going to struggle against Wolves? I mean, I'm sure it would have been a struggle even with Porro and Udogie because Wolves are a good team, but I still think we can win. I still think we can get a positive result, and it's about whether they can step in and just do a job for a game and hopefully provide enough quality to facilitate the better attacking players on the ball. I'm sure they've got enough to do that. They've both stepped in various periods and done well. Weirdly enough, they've both very rarely stepped in at left back and right back. They've both been stepping in at centre back. So in a weird way, do they actually have a lot of experience playing that role this season? Probably not, which is a weird thing to think about. But let's hope they can step in and be good enough. I'm sure they will be. It's only one game, and they've played left back and right back before. Emerson first day of the season wasn't that bad. He scored, didn't he? And that's, I think, probably the last time we saw him at right back. I can't remember. We've seen the left back. Was that the last time we saw him at right back?
Yeah, I do remember him I think it was Rico Henry or someone else who kept getting in behind him, and he was struggling a bit defensively that day. And they're going to have this tomorrow. So there's definitely an argument to say he's got to watch himself, but he's got to make sure that he's very good at keeping the ball. He's not giving it away. Look, I don't expect him to do what Porro does when it comes to getting into the final, although he did score on the opening day, like getting into the final third and getting crosses in. That was a 1 in a million, that Emerson goal.
I don't see that often, that happening. But he just has to make sure he's doing those simple things that we know he can do, and make sure that gets the ball, keeps it well, and facilitates, the better players in the forward line. And same with Davis. Yeah,
and they both actually started, didn't they, at Molineux, these two players? I think Emerson started left back, Ben Davis started left centre back, so they were on that left-hand side together, so at least they'll be on opposite sides of the pitch, so they won't be on the same side of the pitch together. But look, I think for a one-off game, it should be all right. If it was any prolonged amount of time, any period amount of time, if it was 2-3 games, I would start to worry. But because it's just one game, I think we'll be all right, to be honest. But that is your Tottenham update. Thank you for joining us for that. We got a super chat, a very generous super chat. So thank you so much. I can't read your name, but it says DD with a Korean name. So thank you so much. It says Tottenham fighting, Sonny fighting. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing this weekend. Fighting for the badge, Sonny leading us out. That is what we love to see. But let's get on to the match preview then.
I've just noticed there's a lot of Koreans in the chat.
There is a
today,
lot of
so big up
Koreans
to everyone
in
in the chat for joining us for the live stream. Incredible support for everyone joining us. But yeah, welcome to anyone watching from Korea or watching, putting your Korean chats in. Big up to all of you guys.
Welcome everyone watching from anywhere in the world, to be
Welcome
fair.
to
All
anyone.
four corners of the world always here with us. So we love to see you. We appreciate all of you, and big up to each and every one of you. But shall we get on to the match preview?
Yeah.
All right, let's start with the match preview. We'll start off talking about the form of these two clubs going in to the game this weekend. Wolves on the back of a defeat last time out against Brentford 2-0 at Molineux. A bit of an up and down form in terms of results for Wolves recently. They've won 2 out of their last 5. The wins coming in the Cup against West Brom in that Black Country derby, and a 4-2 win away at Chelsea, which was a really impressive performance, to be fair. They kind of just swept Chelsea away in that game, didn't they? Spurs, on the other hand, we're doing quite well in our home games, but it's the away games that have kind of let us down maybe in recent weeks. But I think being at home, being at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, we should be able to really stamp our authority in this game, albeit Wolves are a very tough outfit, and maybe they like playing against teams that play our style of football, don't they?
Yeah, and I think, well, for Spurs, obviously that one loss you can see on screen, it's obviously 1 loss and 4 wins at home, but 1 loss was in the game against Man City in the Cup. I think in the Premier League, it's 5 wins on the trot now for Spurs. So we definitely are building some momentum at home after we did lose during that period, I think 3 games in a row at home, and that was quite disappointing at the time because we'd quite built some... it looked like we were building a fortress at home, and it looked like we were really building up a head of steam. So really great to see that coming back into the side now. And Wolves, as you can see, away form, in a weird way, they tend to be quite good away from home because it suits how they like to play. As you can see there, 2 draws and 3 wins in their last 5 away games, and even against Chelsea away from home, even when they were losing as well, they went to Stamford Bridge and ended up with 4-1 up until late on and ended up winning the game 4-2. So in a weird way, a bit like same with Brighton. When I say this, Brighton were waiting for us when it comes to how they like to play against teams who press them. They like to play against teams who are on the front foot and leave space for them, and they're going to try and play through you. And in a similar vein, what Wolves are going to be waiting for us. They're going to know how we're going to set up. They're going to be expecting what we're going to bring. What we just got to hope to do is, even though they're expecting it, we got to overwhelm them. We got to be even more intense than they expect. We got to be so aggressive with our pressing they can't even handle it. We've already seen against Wolves early in the season that they know what they're going to go with the same kind of philosophy. They're going to try and disrupt us. They're going to try and make things very difficult. They were actually very, very aggressive in that game in the Molineux. Difference in that game is, first of all, that we had Davis and Dyer centre back. We had Emerson at left back, and we had
Porro.
In midfield we had Basuma, Højbjerg, and Sarr, and up front as well we had Son in the 9, and we had Kulusevski on the right and Brendan Johnson on the left. Yeah. It's going to be very, very different now. The team they're going to face. We're going to have Maddison in the centre. Van de Ven and Romero are both going to be back. So hopefully we have a bit more quality when it comes to keeping possession, playing through Wolves, creating chances, and make sure we're keeping the ball in a much better way in Wolves' half, rather than in the game in the Molineux, where we had a very fast start. We took the lead within the first, I think, 3 minutes. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden, Wolves completely grabbed control of that game. They were super aggressive. They didn't give us a moment rest. And I think they kind of they nullified us up until maybe late on. I remember the last 15 minutes or so, we brought on Lo Celso. I can't remember who else we brought on, maybe Richarlison. And we started to, create a few chances.
Bentancur as well.
So and then all of a sudden we had a bit more quality. We started to keep the ball a bit more, and then in a weird way, that was the period we conceded 2 goals in our best period. So sometimes football can be that unpredictable, but we got to make sure we show a lot more quality than we did at Molineux in terms of keeping the ball and making sure we're keeping the ball away from Wolves, and when they are aggressive in their pressing, playing through them rather than constantly giving the ball away like we were at the Molineux. But I would say our team should be better suited to that than it was at the Molineux.
Yeah, it is a bit of a kick in the teeth that, after recovering all these players, going into the last game with a pretty much a clean bill of health, just with a few players with just coming back, you know, Bissouma coming back from the AFCON, Sonny coming back from the Asia Cup. And you're thinking at the end of that game, all right, these guys didn't start, but next game we're going to have a completely back to our first 11, all good, everyone fit. Now, with Pedro Porro and Destiny Udogie out, that does take away a big element of our play, especially with Pedro Porro, the way he likes to dictate things and create from the middle. Yeah, I do think actually Porro over the last couple of games has been tiring and hasn't been as effective going forward as maybe he has been for the most part of the season. But it is very frustrating, like, when you're looking at this game, like we could really do with someone like Pedro Porro to supply those balls like we know he can.
100%, and it's a bit gutting that them two are going to be late absentees, and obviously I was getting excited to finally see that team that we saw in the first 10 games probably come together again in this one. It'd been a while since we saw that 11 start together, so it is a massive shame. But I think both Udogie and Porro have both been looking fatigued over the last few weeks, to be honest. They maybe just needed a little break to come back refreshed and bring that new energy when they come back. So it's a squad game. We're going to have to use our squad. And Davis and Emerson are going to have to step up. I'm not expecting Udogie and Porro level performances from them, but what I just want to see from them, simple things. When Emerson inverts and comes inside to get the ball, he doesn't have to do anything special. Just keep the ball, be a bit press resistant and facilitate the ball upwards. I'm not expecting those brilliant visionary passes like Porro does when he has the ball in the deep position and he can spot a player 30 yards away and he drills a pass into the center of the park. But what I do want is, in a weird way, they're going to have to step up, but other players are going to have to help him. I think people like, if Bissouma starts and Madison or whoever's there, Kulusevski, they're going to have to realize that Emerson doesn't have the vision, and he was not going to be able to pull off the passes that Porro's can make. So when Emerson does get the ball, they have to make sure they're close to him. They're an option for him. They're constantly moving for him because they're going to have to help him. When they have Porro there, they know they can make him run, into space, in a difficult position, and Porro has the vision to pick them out and spot them and make those passes inside. Emerson's different. So as much as Emerson's going to have to step up, I think the team's going to have to step up with them as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely spot on. And, you're always in for a dogfight when you're playing Wolves, and home or away, it's always a very difficult game. As you can see here, we've lost 3 out of our last 5 the game against Wolves. The 2 that we have won just by the goal margin, 1-0 away and 1-0 at home in 21 and 22. But since they've come into the Premier League, it's always been such a difficult game, hasn't it? No matter who their manager is, no matter who our manager is, no matter what personnel is on the pitch, it's always a dogfight.
Home or away as well. It seemed to have some really difficult game as well. It's always a tight game. Now, I remember there was a period, it was under Pochettino, where we would beat them in the Molyneux and they'd beat us at our ground.
And always be like thrillers, like 3-2.
Yeah, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what kind of game, what kind of manager they have. They've always had very good players. Wolves, I do feel like this squad of players actually probably weaker than maybe it has been in previous, which even goes to show what a great job Gary O'Neill was doing with his squad. They used to have really great technicians like Neves and Moutinho and people like that in centre mid. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. They've kind of gone for a more physical approach. People like João Gomez, Mario Lemina, Bellegarde as well. A lot more physical players, pacier players, energetic players, and it's not easier to deal with. It's also very, very difficult to deal with. And Gary O'Neill has really developed a very aggressive team who make things very, very difficult for you, especially when they're in that low block and you're pressing them. It's very difficult to break down. And, that back three there, 3 very physical defenders, all very good in the air, all very good at covering space in that box. Especially you got Gomez and Kilman there, who are very good at coming out into the wide areas, and Craig Dawson gobbles up anything that comes over the top as well. It is going to be a very difficult game. You've got Nouri and Semedo, who again, I've said this before, when we play against systems that play 3 at the back, it's one of those systems that we struggle most against because you've got those wing backs there. They're so wide, they hug the touchline, and we like to invert with our fullbacks. It just naturally leaves that space on those wide areas. And it's one thing when you've got wingers there, but when you've got the wing backs there and the wingers, it makes it even doubly as hard to control those situations. And that's what we're going to have to manage going into this Wolves game. Obviously, Cunha being out is a massive miss for him. He's been so good for them pretty much since around December time. He's been so great. Very consistent goals and assists.
9 goals and 6 assists for Cunha this year. There's going to be a massive miss for them. And I've been so surprised and so impressed of how he's actually handled this season, because last year was kind of like a bedding in period for him in the Premier League, and he didn't produce anywhere close to the numbers that he's already produced this season.
Yeah, Cunha's always been one of those players who looks great, but can be very frustrating. Like when he's on the pitch, I remember he literally set the tone for that on the first day of the season against Man United. I remember he had an amazing game. When he got on the ball, he can beat players for fun, but as soon as he got to the penalty box, he just kind of fluffs his lines and doesn't get a good shot off. But Gary O'Neill has really worked a lot with him to improve his end product, clearly, because he is now a consistent goal threat. He's getting regular goals. He's setting players up for fun. He's getting regular assists as well. And the way they play as well, when he does get opportunities in the final third, but by and large, he's usually got time and space because of the way the Wolves play. They draw the opposition in, then they hit them in the transition when there's space in behind. And so Cunha's really been working wonders with that. And he's developed this role as a false nine. He's never really played that role a lot in his career. For Atletico Madrid, he was usually either playing out wide or he's playing in the number 10 role. But this false 9 position really suits him, so it's a massive plus for Tottenham. He's going to be out, but Pedro Neto is going to be there. Hwang Hee-chan is back available from injury as well. Sarabia has been he's been a bit hit and miss, but he's obviously a good player. We know what Sarabia
PTSD from Sarabia from earlier on this season. What a goal that was! I mean, how did he pick that one out? He tapped it over a player and then just volleyed it into the top corner. It was just nuts.
It was an unbelievable goal right in stoppage time, just before Lamina scored the winner as well. So even without Cunha, they're still going to be a massive threat because Hwang is back and Neto. It's Neto by himself. I've seen Neto enough times. I remember in the game against Liverpool this season, they ended up losing the game at home 3-1, but they didn't have Cunha in that game, and they didn't have Hwang, as well. But literally every time they got the ball, they just gave it to Neto every single time. And he was literally doing it by himself. Every time he was getting the ball, he was doing it all by himself.
In which game, sorry?
Liverpool at home.
Oh.
I remember that game. They were literally just getting to him time and time again, whether it be on the left or the right, and he was tearing them to shreds.
He can beat anyone in a 1v1, not even just a 1v1 situation, like a 2v1 situation. That's how good Neto is. Like, he's probably one of the best, if not the best dribbler in the league right now.
Yeah, 100%. He's so effective, especially on the counter. So he's obviously a massive worry, Pedro Neto. We've just got to make sure we're not allowing him the space. But the problem is, the way we play, we naturally are going to allow him the space. So just got to make sure he's not as being effective as he has been this season, because he's been super effective.
So how do you stop then someone like Neto with the players that we have? Is it a case of just Christian Romero just being really super aggressive and really tight against him?
I think he's more. I reckon I'm predicting Neto to play more on the right hand side than the left, because if Hwang Hee-chan's going to play, I'm thinking he's more naturally going to play on the left. So if Neto's going to play on the right, that's going to be kind of.
It could be Neto straight up front. They've done that a couple of times. It could be
as well. I would suggest, if I was their manager, not doing that. But if they do that, that would probably benefit us, I would say, because you want Neto out wide. That's where you want him. So I'm not sure. Maybe it'll be Hwang up front and Neto on the left. Maybe that could be a case as well. If Neto does start on the right, that would benefit us a bit, because Van de Ven will have that pace to be able to maybe contain him as more than other defenders. But I reckon he might have the beating of someone like a Ben Davis on the wing more than maybe a Emerson Royale, just because of physically. So look, wherever he plays and whatever way you slice it, it's going to be difficult to contain. We just got to make sure we're not allowing him shots off, and whoever he's trying to pick out in the box, we've got well marked, because he's going to be very difficult in those one-on-one situations to contain. And I'm sure as well, with all the rumours circulating recently, he might see this as a bit of an audition for Tottenham to see him in the flesh.
I hope so. I hope he does see it. I hope he does see it as an audition, because if he can put these injury problems to bed, I'd love to see him in a Spurs shirt. But it's not just Pedro Neto that they have. That's a really tricky customer. It's Hwang Hee-chan, who's kind of like exploded out of nowhere this season. Double figures in goals for Hwang Hee-chan this season. I mean, what a performance and what a season he's having in a Wolves shirt. And he's been out for the last few weeks from the Asia Cup, and he was out injured in the last game. But are we potentially catching him at a good time, just bedding back into life in the Premier League? Maybe still not fully fit?
Yeah, it's hard to say. Obviously, he didn't look at his very best in the Asia Cup. We were watching a lot of those games. Obviously, he didn't start the tournament fully fit and had to play, I think, by the last group game or maybe the round of 16. That's when he made his return. He never really looked that fully fit. Did score a penalty, but didn't think he looked particularly. Maybe he rushed himself back to try and play for Korea in the cup. Obviously, he missed last week. He didn't return immediately like Heung-min Son did, so that suggests that maybe he's still not fully 100% fit. But given that break, he's had a break now, and Gary Neal does say he's back. So I'm assuming Hwang Hee-chan to benefit from that rest. And look, are we catching him at a good time? In a sense that maybe he won't be able to last 90 minutes. Maybe, yes. But in a sense that if he gives an hour and playing as good as he's been for that hour, I mean, he might be on the end of a goal or an assist at the end of the day. So it's hard. It'll be definitely hard to say that, but he's been so good this season. We're going to do a head-to-head, I guess, after the preview between him and Songs. Is interesting to see, and there's been suggestions that Spurs might look at Hwang Hee-chan in the summer as well. But he's had a stellar season this season, and he's been very impressive, and he's really developing into one of the most effective forwards in the league this season.
And you're looking at the midfield battle going into this game. I assume that it will be Yves Bissouma. You know, Rodrigo Bentancur hasn't looked to his best as of yet, albeit in the second half in the last game he did look to be, you know, getting himself back into the game, but he was taken off, and quite rightly so, because in the first half he just wasn't at the races, to be honest. Kept getting caught on the ball, poor passing as well, which you don't really associate with Rodrigo. But in terms of Yves Bissouma, he's going to be a massive plus to us. I thought he came on in the last game as well and looked really good in terms of his defensive displays. And when you're looking at the midfield that Wolves are going to potentially play with Lemina and Gomez, you know you're always going to be in a proper fight with those guys.
Yeah, it depends what as well formation Wolves play, because sometimes they go with a 3-5-2 with 3 in the middle, and sometimes they go with a 3-4-3. So it's been a bit of a mix for Wolves.
Against
most
Brentford,
of the time,
it was 3-4-3.
Yeah, most of the time it is 3-4-3, but Hwang wasn't available for that game, so maybe they go with just Hwang and Neto up front.
But Cunha was there, so maybe it's just a like for like with Cunha and Hwang, or Cunha and Neto.
I've got a feeling they might go for a 3 in the middle, maybe put Bellegarde in. Obviously, a lot of people, the predictions at the moment, Sarabia kind of keeps his place or starts. But I've got a feeling they go Neto and Hwang up front, and they put Bellegarde next to Lemina and João Gomez. I think that would go a long way to maybe trying to nullify Spurs, and that would be very difficult for us to deal with. I think their midfield 3 are very combative, very aggressive. We saw that at Molineux, how much they were able to nullify our midfield. What I would say is, at Molineux, we didn't have anyone on the pitch who seemed to want to take the ball on the half turn and have that quality to get to kind of twist past the player and get the ball into the final third, which we did see, you know, last week against Brighton. Maddison was, so good at that. Every time he got the ball, he was able to twist away from someone and play a quick ball forward, and he's brilliant in that, James Maddison. So they're going to be coming up against a different kind of threat than they were last time out, but it's still going to be difficult because they've got so much energy. João Gomez is a really good ball carrier as well. Mario Lemina is so effective in that box-to-box role. He covers so much ground. He puts his foot in. He gets tackles, interceptions, and he's also quite good at carrying the ball forward as well. And Bellegarde is a very good dribbler, really good dribbler with the ball at his feet, and he's so difficult to get close to. One thing I would say about Bellegarde is first of all, he seems to tire pretty quickly, and second of all, he can be quite wasteful, but he's one of those players who can sometimes, on his day, go past you like you're not even there. So we're going to have to be making sure that Sarr and Bissouma, if they are starting, getting straight in there, getting super aggressive and getting stuck in and not being standoffish, which I feel like sometimes when we get into that rhythm where we're standing off a bit, we're too easy to play against. And that's sometimes been a problem with our first halves, like against Brighton and against Brentford. We're just a bit too standoffish.
Yeah, and it's good to hear what Ange Postecoglou said at the end of the last game, judging by that first half, we're going to need a whole week's training just to prepare for the next game. And obviously we know it's a very difficult game against Wolves. And hopefully after Ange saying that, he will have his team proper fit and firing and ready going into this game against Wolves. You're going to have Bissouma with another week of training behind his belt. You're going to have Heung-min Son with another week of training behind his belt, as well as everyone else. But those two players specifically, because they just haven't played a lot of football for Spurs in the past. Well, Bissouma's not been seen since before December, before the last game. So it's going to be so vitally important for us to see these guys back on the pitch. I want to see Son back at it. I want to see Bissouma back at it. And I think that with that week's training, it will really stand us in good stead.
100%, and hopefully Ange can get his message across. Hopefully we come out with new energy. And we know that, especially at home with the crowd behind us, if we come out flying and really put the pressure on early, there is a chance we come flying out the traps and get a goal or two early, like we've done a few times this season. Especially with Wolves, how they like to play, they're going to come with a plan of keeping things tight, compact. So we got to unsettle them early.
Yeah.
They're not going to come flying out the traps and try and score an early goal. They're going to try and contain us, grow into the game, and then start to hit us when we see us, start to tire, or if we start making a few mistakes, then they're going to try and spring and take those opportunities to get forward and get the Neto on the ball and Chan on the ball. But what Spurs' job to do is early on really unsettle their back line, make sure you're pressing them really aggressively, try and force some early opportunities and try and get an early goal or two. And if we can do that, that can go a long way to try and really managing this game, because Wolves have shown this season away from home they can be super difficult to play against, especially when you let them get organised and let them get a foothold in the game. They can be really, really difficult. So we need to set the tone early of what we're going to try to do and how aggressive we're going to be, and not let what we've done in the past few games carry on in those first halves. Because if we start the game in the first half tomorrow like we did against Brentford and Brighton, then we're going to be in trouble.
Who do you think is more suited to this game in the front line? Because we all know that certainty is going to be Heung-min Son and Richarlison. But do you feel like, nothing to do with what Ange you think is going to pick, but who do you think is more suited? Is Kulusevski or Brennan Johnson for a game like this?
I think Kulu. I think someone who's going to keep possession, keep it away from Wolves as well, and more likely to pick a lock, is going to be a bit more effective in this kind of game than Brennan Johnson. I know Brennan did really well, came off the bench and scored, and he's been getting in that back post, and maybe in the second half he'll be a good option. But I would start Kulusevski again. I thought he was so unlucky to be brought off last week against Brighton, where he was really starting to grow in the game. He just set up a goal basically and then was taken off. So I do wonder whether Ange will look at that and think Brennan came on and scored, he's earned his place. I would stick with Kulu. I really think if we start with Son and Johnson, we're going to really struggle to maintain possession. And I feel like there'll be too many transitions and it's going to be hard to control the game. If we start with Kulu, I think I'm a lot more confident that Spurs will be able to build attacks from the back, get the ball to Kulu. He'll be able to hang on to the ball and we'll be able to, manipulate the ball forward. And I'll be a lot more confident that we'll be able to create more chances. So I personally would go with Kulu.
And if we do go with that front three, Son, Richarlison and Kulu on the weekend, what options again? Like we talked about it last week, but now even more so, you're going to have a Timo Werner on the bench. You're going to have a Brennan Johnson on the bench, a Giovanni Lo Celso as well. 3 players that can actually change a game.
Yeah, and really start to put pressure on the opposition, 100%. I do wonder as well, you can always move Kulu into the centre and go super attacking, partner him with Maddison. Also, Lo Celso, you can maybe bring him on next to Maddison as well. But also, if Maddison is tiring, it's not like we lose our fully creativity. You bring Lo Celso on, who showed while Maddison was out, he can, partly fill in that role to some extent. So 100% looking at those options on the bench and those attacking options, it's definitely a lot healthier than it was for a lot of this season, especially when we went to the Molineux. I remember it was very difficult to change that game.
Yeah, because in that game in the Molineux, I think we all said it at the time. We all said it after the game. Like, Gio should have started that game because we had no sort of creativity at all in that middle of the park. Højbjerg put in a terrible performance that day, I remember. And we were all saying, where the hell's Giovanni Lo Celso? And then he came on I don't even know if he came on in the end.
He did. It came on late, I remember.
Or really late, like when it was too late. But Look, I think we should go into this game confident. We have to take 3 points this weekend in terms of you're looking at teams around us. Man United go away to Luton. We don't want to see them get closer to us. Aston Villa, who do Villa play this weekend?
Fulham away.
Fulham away, which is a tough game. So I think we got to start bridging a gap between these sides, especially Aston Villa, who it's kind of like every week it changes who goes back into the top four with Aston Villa. So I think it's really important to us to start. I said it last week after the Brentford game, well, before the Brentford game, we have to go on a big run now. And we've beaten Brighton. Now let's carry on this run, especially at home, where we've been really good at home this season, apart from that run where we were suffering all those injuries. We should be going confident into any game at home.
Of course, 100%. And we just got to make sure the main aim would be, for me, is by the time that difficult run in April comes, we have to make sure we've got a big gap between us and the chasing pack. And if we can do that, then we don't go into those games worried about losing. We go into those games thinking, what if we win? That's the situation we want to be in.
Yeah.
You don't want to be concerned and anxious and have that anxiety about, if we lose these games, we can drop out of the top four. And if Villa win, and all of a sudden, if you go to these games with like an 8-9 point gap or something like that, then all of a sudden you're not worried about, if we lose, Villa can catch us. You're saying if we win, we can overtake them. That's what you're thinking. So that is the main aim for me.
Especially
momentum going into that run.
Especially, well, forget that run for a second, but especially going into that game at Villa Park in a month's time. We've got 2 winnable home games now with Wolves and Crystal Palace. If we do win these 2 games, there should be a bit of daylight between us and Aston Villa going into that game. So that will be highly vital as well.
I completely agree with that as well.
But yeah, that is our match preview. In terms of our predictions, I'm going to go for 2-1 to Spurs. I do feel it like it's going to be a bit of a dogfight on that pitch tomorrow, 3 p.m. kickoff. But I do feel like we do have the extra advantage in terms of the extra quality, the home advantage as well. The fans behind us, Sonny back starting from the beginning with that star quality, with probably what has got to say the only proper world-class player on that pitch. That will be on Saturday. So I'm going to go for 2-1 in a very closely fought counter.
Yeah, in my preview, I said 3-1. That wasn't taking into account that Udogie and Porro were going to definitely be out. Now we know they're out. I do expect us to be it to be a bit more difficult for us to build up our play than maybe if they were fit. So I do anticipate a bit of a struggle. Although I can see us being fairly solid defensively. I'm going to stick with it. I'm going to go with 3-1. I think we should have enough in the forward line. I think we can come on and change it as well. You got to remember Wolves. With Cunha out, they've kind of got their front free, and there's not too much they can do. So if they haven't really scored by the hour mark or the 70-minute mark, it's going to be very difficult for them to bring people on and change it. You got to remember at the Molineux, they struggled to score, and then they're able to bring on Sarabia and whatever, and they end up winning the game. So I'm going to go with 3-1 Spurs.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is our match preview. Those are our predictions. Let me know your predictions in the comments section below, and let's finish off talking about this big South Korean derby this weekend in terms of Heung-min Son against Hwang Hee-chan. Obviously, they both had a really disappointing Asia Cup not long ago, both coming back. This is Hwang's first game back. This is going to be Son's first start back. So let's get a look at the comparisons in the stats.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to look at. Both Korean forwards are having stellar seasons. There's going to be a bit of a showdown, I think, especially that's how a lot of the South Korean media are pushing this in terms of Son versus Hwang, 2 forwards into double figures for goals and assists so far this season. There have been some suggestions as well that Hwang could be of interest to Tottenham as well in the summer. Maybe we're looking at him considering the form he's in. But let's look at some of the stats from this season. So appearances, obviously 21 for Son, 20 for Hwang. Goals, 12 for Son, 10 for Hwang. Assists, 6 for Son, 3 for Hwang. So Son's really been a lot more creative. And as you can see here, shots on target per 90. Son's well in front, 1.31 to 0.75. Shots in total, a bit more similar, 2.67 to 2.11. Dribbles per 90. Hwang definitely makes a lot more dribbles than Son does, 1.93, nearly 2 per game compared to Son, 1.15. But this is a key one. This is the difference, I think, in the quality of 2 players. Key passes per game, 1.99 to 0.87. So as much as Hwang has been very effective in the forward line, when it comes to creating chances and helping the team out, Son clearly for me looks like he's head of the game in that. But dribbling wise, when it comes to I think when you look at that dribbling stat, the reason why Hwang's is so much higher is because when he gets the ball, I feel like he's in space a lot more because of their transitional game, whereas Son has a lot more players to confront when he gets the ball. So obviously, a lot of these stats can be kind of not manipulated, but because of the teams they play for, sometimes the stats can make a bit of a difference. So you don't have to. It's not a foregone conclusion. For example, Son probably has more shots because Spurs have more shots in general than Wolves do. But when you consider all of that, Hwang is doing a fantastic job for Wolves, considering he's playing in a counter-attacking team. He has to kind of take less chances available to him. And, 13 goal contributions in 20 games is brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's no surprise there. The stats are heavily in favour of Heung-min Son, seeing as Heung-min Son, the level of the man. And Hwang, as much as I've been impressed with him, I do feel like he might be missing Cunha this weekend, because I feel like them two link up really well together. And I think the partnership of Hwang and Cunha has been so vital to Wolves this season in the majority of their games. Don't you feel like that's going to be a big miss for Hwang this weekend?
Definitely. He's going to have to rely on that partnership with Neto a lot more. But Cunha's kind of been a bit of that glue in terms of the way he brings other players into play. He's been getting a lot of assists this season as well. So I feel like Neto and Hwang are a lot better when it comes to being isolated on the wing, and they can take people on. And I feel like Hwang's been more of the finisher of that front three. I feel like Cunha's been a bit the facilitator, and Neto's been the guy who just drags that front three forward with his amazing dribbling ability. Cunha glues it together, and Hwang's been the one who usually finished it off. But without Cunha there to facilitate it all, we'll see how involved in the game he gets.
Well, let's have a look at the general comparison between Hwang and Son and see where we go from there.
Yeah, so in terms of general, as you see, Son's the one in the red here. This is a pie chart. This is basically a general comparison.
Never put Son in red again.
Well, it wasn't my choice, unfortunately, but Hwang's in the blue. One thing that's clear is you can see with the blue at the bottom, those are the defensive stats. So that is something that Hwang generally performs quite well at. He does make a lot more interceptions, tackles, clearances than Sonny does, albeit again, is that because Wolves are a lot more defensive situations than Spurs are? They have a lot less possession, so he's tracking back a lot more, but clearly he definitely puts the work in, and he's quite good when it comes to the defense situations. But apart from that, Son definitely, he gets a lot more on the ball. As you can see, touches in the penalty area, progressive passes, pass completion, shot creating actions. His non-penalty XG a lot higher than Hwang as well. More assists. What's interesting, his non-penalty XG and assists is a lot higher, but his non-penalty XG is very similar. So that goes to show me that Hwang definitely gets into a lot of goal-scoring positions comparable to Son, even though Son is obviously getting a lot more attacking chances because of the team he plays for. So that's quite interesting that their non-penalty XG is similar, albeit Son's is still slightly higher. But in general, Son's obviously performing a lot higher in all these metrics, but Hwang is still fairly close in quite a lot of them.
Do you feel like, because I remember speaking with you earlier in the season saying, this is just a purple patch for Hwang, he's never going to last this throughout the season. Do you feel like this could be like a one-off season for Hwang? Because we've never seen him produce these kind of numbers before. Maybe similar to maybe a bit of a Almiron from Newcastle last season, how Almiron just had a crazy season last year and he hasn't been able to really replicate it this season.
First of all, what I would say to that is he was actually really good at Salzburg. Hwang, I remember watching him in the Champions League before Wolves signed him, and I was actually really impressed with him. And the reason I don't...
11 goals, 12 assists
for
Salzburg.
For Salzburg, yeah. Yes, we haven't seen these numbers before from him. Same with Cunha, to be honest. We haven't seen these kind of numbers.
This is Cunha's second season. I think it's Hwang's third season for Wolves.
But clearly Gary Neal has got them getting the best out of them in terms of output. When I say it was a purple patch for him, I didn't think it would last. Obviously, I think it was that was on a run of at the time, I think at the beginning of the season he had 5 goals in 6 games or something ridiculous. Anyway, he was scoring a lot of goals. I didn't think he was going to go on and score 20, 25 goals, anything like that. So that's what I meant by purple patch. But in terms of him, at the moment he's on 10. I do expect maybe him to end the season between 10 and 15. If he gets more than 15, that'll be an amazing season. I'll be surprised. But do I think this is something you can carry on? I actually do, because the difference between him and Almiron is Almiron was when you talk about purple patch, he was literally picking up the ball from 30 yards and shooting every time, and it was going top corner every time. That was never sustainable. He was never that good of a player to keep scoring those kind of goals, in my opinion. Hwang's a bit different. He's getting these goal-scoring positions, and he's actually been always a player who gets in good positions. He's actually always been a decent finisher. I just never believed he was going to continue his goal-scoring run like he has done. But to be fair to him, he's been able to keep it up. He is a good finisher when he gets in one-on-one situations, and he's always been a player who gets in fairly good goal-scoring positions. So I do think he's a good player. I know he's 26 years of age now. Do I expect him to be getting double digits from year in, year out? I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if next year he's going to get over 10 goals this year. I wouldn't be surprised if next year he also gets between like 8 and 13 Premier League goals again, because I do think he's that good a player. He can keep getting those positions.
Do you think he's a player that can thrive in an Ange Postecoglou system, and he is someone that we should be looking at this summer? Obviously, if we're going to look for someone at Wolves, and if he can get over his injury problems, you obviously prefer Pedro Neto. But if that doesn't come to pass, and let's say Neto goes to someone else, or he can't get, or he gets another big injury this season, and for whatever reason we don't go for Neto, would you like to see us go for Hwang?
The reason I say no is because I don't see where he fits in. I wouldn't want to play him on the wing. Even though he's a fairly decent dribbler, he's not a chance creator. He's not a player who facilitates other players. That's what we want from our wingers, more in general. We don't want a goal-scoring winger. We want a winger who can create chances for a teammate, and maybe, if he can also score goals. That's the secondary thing. That's Hwang's main attribute is what he's like in front of goal. When he's a good finisher, he's calm in front of goal. See, the difference with him and Neto is a winger. Neto facilitates other players. His main attribute is his ability to take people on and make assists, set people up, get good crosses in, good passes back. That's not Hwang. So if we're signing Hwang, it might be to be a forward. But do we want Hwang to come in and play up front? I don't know. I don't think he would be an amazing number 9. I think he could probably do a job, but I don't know if I'd sign him to do that role. So on that basis, just because of the way we play, I don't know if he's the right fit. If we were under Conte, maybe, I think he'd be, in a weird way, a better fit because of the way we like to set up our forwards. But under Ange, I just don't see him being an effective winger under Ange. I can see him doing okay, but not to the level we want. Whereas Neto's different. I see him being very effective.
I mean, Neto could just do it all, though, can't he? Like, he obviously you'd want him on the wing, but he can do that role up front as well.
I wouldn't want Neto up front for us. I want him on the wing, 100%. I wouldn't want him playing in the number 9.
You just need someone who's like a dynamite finisher up top in this kind of Spurs system. And I think obviously you'd prefer him on the wing, but if push comes to shove and we get injuries and stuff, I wouldn't have any problem putting him in the number 9.
Neto?
Yeah.
I don't see him as this great finisher. Neto.
He's a good finisher. He's a very good finisher.
Okay, but I don't know. I've never seen him as a number 9. I know he's played in a 2 up front for Wolves sometimes, and sometimes up front by himself. I've never been that impressed when he plays up front, to be honest. I always much prefer him out wide.
No, but what I'm saying is, like I said, I'd much prefer him on the wing, but if push comes to shove, if we do have injuries, you wouldn't have too many problems putting him there.
Yeah, I guess.
But in terms of out-and-out wingers, let's go and have a look at that winger comparison.
And this is what I mean about him being a winger purely. Look how when you strip down all the stats and just put the stats that are relevant to wingers on comparing to Son. Look how much Son outperforms him. It's just massively. The only things Hwang is better at is successful take-ons, but everything else, and sort of successful take-ons and at the amount of crosses he makes into the box, he outperforms Sonny as well. But other than that, it's just Sonny completely outperforming him, and that's what I mean about Hwang being a winger. He's more of a wide forward than a winger, and I guess I also put Son into that category as well. But but I also think Son is more of a wide forward than a winger. But Son as well has been performing that winger duty for Spurs, especially in recent weeks, to a really good effect.
Is that just this season? These metrics?
Yeah, this is just this season. Yeah, so. I also don't think Son, in a weird way, is the winger that we need. I still also prefer him in a number 9 in an Ange system to being out wide. But even that, I'm comparing him to Hwang, and he just massively outperforms Hwang in all these metrics in terms of shot creating actions, touches in the final third, progressive passes received, so getting in those positions to receive the passes, passes into the penalty area, key passes, progressive carries into the final third and into the penalty area. It's just all massively dominated by Sonny.
Yeah, and it's what you expect, isn't it? Like, Heung-min Son's a much better player than Hwang Hee-chan anyway. Like, I think in all the metrics and in every facet, even if you don't look at the stats, I could probably told you of that. But look, I think it's definitely something that we need to watch out for this weekend. It's going to be an interesting matchup seeing Sonny come up against Hwang Hee-chan, especially after all that happened out in Korea last week. But that is our comparison between Hwang Hee-chan and Heung-min Son. Let us know in the comment section below your thoughts regarding that matter. But yeah, I think that is... Oh, no, sorry. That is not all we have time for today.
We have a super chat here.
Go on.
As well from someone who's making his first super chat. I can't read his name because it's in Korean, but it says, you guys said right. Better watch out for Hwang. We know that his movement and dribbles are spot on these days. Yeah, hard to disagree. Hwang is definitely going to be a very difficult player to manage, him and Neto up front. So we've got to make sure defensively we are on point.
Yeah, and I want to say a welcome to the Big D. Welcome to Silver. Welcome to Silver, and welcome to the We Are Tottenham family. You are able to come and join the fan show after the game on the weekend, after the 3 p.m. kickoff against Wolves. And I just want to let everyone know that we still do fan shows after every game. So if you want to come on and join and have your say, the link to join as a member is in the description below, or you could just click join underneath the video as well. So come and join in the membership and come and have your say on the fan show and join Barnaby on the weekend alongside Amir. But let's go and have a look at our predicted lineup going into the game this weekend. Ange Postecoglou has been speaking his press conference, and what is the team news?
So, obviously, Destiny Udogie and Pedro Porro are both ruled out for this weekend, in what is a massive blow, considering they've been so important this season. In terms of individually, he said Udogie has picked up a bit of a knock and hopefully what is not too serious, and he'll be back for our next game. He said with Pedro Porro, it's a bit of a muscle injury, and he's set to be out for about 2 weeks, but seeing as we don't play against Chelsea next week, he's hoping that Wolves will be the only game that he will be missing for. Fraser Forster has fractured one of his toes, and he'll be out for a couple of months. He's fractured it in training. He never confirmed it, but Lo Celso and Ryan Sessegnon were both seen at the open training and have both been returned to first team training. So I do assume they are both fit to play and available for selection now, which is really positive. So we were set to have a full bill of health, and now we have another three injuries come at the last.
And that is life as a Tottenham Hotspur fan, unfortunately, people. But Ange also was saying, he was asked, are you going to have to change your system to accommodate these cases? He says, no, we stick with the same thing. We go with the same way. So 4-3-3 as per usual. In goal is going to be obviously Vicario.
Yeah, and I thought against... and they dealt with the set pieces a lot better than they did previously. I thought we came with a way of trying to deal with it. Madison, pushing the Brighton players away. Wolves obviously a lot more effective from set pieces as well. They have a lot of big men there. They play the 3 at the back system. They're going to have 3 centre backs, so definitely something to watch out for. In a weird way, the game against Wolves last time, wasn't that busy, but it was just a game where they got 2 late chances and 2 goals. So he's going to be on his toes here to make sure that he's keeping Wolves out. Yeah,
absolutely. So Vicario in goal. Right back, we are going to look at Emerson Royale, and it's kind of a bit of a give and take this weekend with Emerson Royale, because what you gain is a bit more defensive solidity, but what you lose is a bit more going forward.
And I always, in this kind of system, value the going forward a lot more. So it is a shame that Porro's out. We haven't actually seen Emerson too much a right back, which is a weird one because he actually has played quite a lot of games this season.
Yeah, filling at left back, centre back.
And centre back has been where he's been getting his performances. So it'll be interesting to see him back at right back in his natural position. I'm not expecting a massive performance from Emerson this weekend. All I want from him is to do what he does best, keep things simple, facilitate other players who are better on the ball, and make sure when he's got Hwang or Neto running at him, he's as defensively solid as we know he can be. So hope he can step up and fill in, but he's going to need his teammates to help him as well.
Yeah, what you know about Emerson, he's always going to come in with the right mentality. That's the best thing about Emerson, is his mentality and the way he conducts himself. So I think he'll come in with the right mentality, and I think he'll do his best to try and stake a claim for that right right back spot even when Pedro Porro is back. I don't think he'll be able to do that because of what Pedro brings to us, but he'll have that in his mind for sure. Moving on to the right centre back situation, and that is Cuti Romero, who's going to be so vital in terms of having to deal with someone like a Pedro Neto.
Yeah, and Ange was talking about Romero in his press conference, saying, I always thought before I came, he was one of the best defenders in the world, but he's really just taken me aback about how he's taken on that leadership role, with not just with Mickey, but with all the rest of the team as well. And he's so impressed me, Cuti Romero, ever since I've got into the club. And that's so lovely to hear, because we can see it on the pitch how he's taken that in his stride, and he's such a vital cog to this defence. And he's going to have a big game on the weekend, because in a weird way, if they play Neto and Hwang in a front two, it's going to be very difficult to know how to manage that, because do you be super aggressive? If they go deep, you have to follow them, or do you wait for them to kind of be on the last shoulder and then track them? It's going to be a bit of a difficult one to manage. If they play a 3-4-3, who plays up front? Do they going to be interchanging a lot? So Romero's going to have his work cut out, and he's going to have to make sure he's communicating a lot with his defenders to deal with that situation.
And alongside him, Mickey van der Ven, who obviously his recovery pace is going to be vital in this, isn't it?
Definitely, especially if Neto plays on that right-hand side. I do expect him to have the beating of our fullback. So it's going to mean Van der Ven is going to have to be coming over to that side a lot and covering and making sure we're not getting exposed. So I can see him having a very important role. There is a lot of people suggesting, do we put Van der Ven at left back and bring Dragoshin in? I've even seen one suggestion saying we should bring Romero to right back and put Dragoshin in there. But we did see in the open training the back four that Ange was intending to play, and it was with Romero and Van der Ven at centre back, with Emerson at right back and the next guy at left back.
Yeah, and the next guy is Ben Davis. Obviously, we saw him play at Molineux at the left centre-back position, but this is his, what you say, natural position. I don't know what his most favoured position now is. Is it left-back or is it left centre-back? But we most likely will see him at left-back this weekend.
Yeah, in a weird way, I do think that left inverted role does kind of suit him, because I do think he's quite a comfortable player in possession. He can play decent passes as well. Obviously, he's not going to have that ability to just charge up the pitch like Udogie does, but hopefully he can do things in a different way, in the way that he brings to the table. I saw them training that high line in the open training session. It was that back four, so hopefully they're becoming prepared for what Wolves are going to bring to us in the attacking sense, which is going to be a lot of running, a lot of pace. So we're going to have to make sure that high line is spot on if we're going to make sure we're not getting exposed.
And in terms of Ben Davis, a lot of people always get worried when they see him in the lineup or when he's about to play, but he rarely lets us down, doesn't he?
Well, especially this season, as when he's been in centre back, he's been really good. So credit where credit's due. I don't think we've seen him at left back other than maybe one half against Palace, I think. So again, another player we haven't seen in his most what you'd say his natural position this season.
Moving into the midfield in the number 6 position, I think we're going to see a return to Yves Bissouma, a much welcome return as well, because I think he came on with a bit of a point to prove against Brighton. He looked good, didn't look his usual self going forward, but what he did do is give us a bit of defensive solidity, made a number of interceptions and looked quite sharp in that situation. So I think as well, before he got that red card, he wasn't in the best form after that Luton game till he got that sending off. So I want to see Bissouma put in one of those classic Bissouma performances from the first 10 games of the season. Yeah,
and he's going to be very important in this game. Obviously, Bentancur's been playing a lot of the games recently, hasn't been in his best form over the last couple of games, so has been forced off early a few times as well. So I think it's probably best that he does come out for the team for the time being. Ange was also talking about Bentancur in his press conference, saying, I've got no worries about Bentancur. I thought he was brilliant, outstanding even when he came on in that Villa game, but unfortunately he took another knock and that's kind of affected him a bit. But I'm sure as the more time comes, he's going to get better and better and get back to his best. But I do think Bissouma comes in, and we also, again with Bissouma, we need him to get back to his best, because we just haven't seen the best of him since the early parts of the season. It's been a real shame, because he's such a delight to watch when he's in full confidence and in flying form, and for one reason or another it just hasn't happened since that Luton game. So I want to see him at his best, but it's going to be a difficult game against a very combative midfield that Wolves have.
Yeah, maybe he just needed a bit of time away, and maybe he's come back a bit more refreshed, because maybe those kind of sending offs did affect him a bit too much, and maybe a bit too much than we would have expected. But I think time away would have done him the world of good, to be honest, Bissouma. And now he's back. Let's see the best of him. And I really expect him to kick on now from now until the end of the season. In terms of the next guy in midfield we're going to talk about, and that is Pape Matar Sarr. Came back in firing form, didn't he? In the last game, he was my man in the match against Brighton, got on the score sheet as well. So hopefully more of the same.
Yeah, we're going to need him to do that job that he does so effectively, which is first will help Emerson out on the right, get those long bursting runs forward like he was doing in that second half against Brighton. Just do the job Sarr does, and he's so important to the team. We're going to need that quality that he offers.
And then to make up that three-man midfield is obviously going to be James Maddison, who's been good since his return. I think he's slowly getting better and better every game as well. So hopefully it'll be the best of the lot this weekend.
Yeah, and he was massively missed at the game in the Molineux. It just seemed like we had no player to hang on to the ball in the middle and be on the half turn and make something happen. And Maddison will definitely bring that. I do think he's getting better and better. I agree with you. I've been actually really liking his performance since he's come back from injury. So hopefully he can go from strength to strength and maybe get on the score sheet on this one.
Yeah, let's hope so. So that's Bissouma, Sarr and Maddison as a midfield three. On the right-hand side of the attack, we're going to go for Dejan Kulusevski. He was creeping back into the game, provided a really good pass for the first goal. And then he was taken off just minutes after that, which was a bit of a shame. But hopefully he can get back to those kind of levels that he showed in that second half.
Yeah, and I think he's going to be really important in this game. I think over the recent weeks, we've really struggled to keep hold of the ball in the final third. And it's been very frustrating, and it's led to a lot of transitions against us. And I feel like as well, that's maybe why we've not put in some of the best performances recently, because we're just always on the end of a transition because we keep giving it away. That's why I feel like Kulusevski definitely starts in this game. He's got the ability to hang on to the ball, create chances, use his strength to get out of tight situations as well. And I thought he was having a good game against Brighton, unfortunately, when he got taken off. So hopefully that was enough to keep his place in this one. Yeah,
I did feel like he was poor in the first half, but second half he definitely improved massively, and he just was taken off as soon as he was exploding in the game, which was very unfortunate. But let's move on to the striker, and that is obviously going to be Richarlison, the man on form. Didn't get on the score sheet in the last game against Brighton, had a fairly good game. I thought it was a bit up and down, to be fair, but I think he's been brilliant of late.
Yeah, he's still a man in form, and I also think in this game he's going to be very important because they play those three centre-backs. They're going to be very tight, very organised. It's going to be very difficult to gain any sort of superiority. So one of the ways we're going to have to do it is getting in behind them on the wing and just cutting it back for Richarlison, ready and waiting to pounce and maybe get a header in on goal. He's going to have that physical presence to hopefully cope as much as possible with that defensive three, better than anyone else. So with his form, I definitely expect him to carry on playing and starting, and hopefully he can carry on his good form.
And then to finish off that starting 11, you know exactly who it is. And it's going to be Heung-min Son on the left-hand side of the attack. The talisman, and he is back in the starting lineup, people.
Yeah, and we expect him to start. Oh, don't know what.
Hey, creators.
Sorry about that. What was I going to say? Yeah, Son obviously didn't come into the starting lineup last week. We expected him to start. It was a shame that it didn't quite happen, but obviously came off the bench, got a great assist, and was absolutely fantastic off the bench, last minute clutch moment. And given that he's had a week with the team now, obviously expect him to start this game.
You guys one more time. So it's Vicario in goal, Emerson right back, Ben Davis left back, Romero and Van der Ven in the centre back positions, with Bissouma, Sarr and Maddison making that middle three. Kulusevski, Son supporting Richarlison. Sim sticking with the prediction of 3-1 to Tottenham. I'm going for 2-1. I do think it's going to be a bit of a dogfight on that pitch, and hopefully Spurs can come through it with the quality that we do have, especially it being at home. And I think we owe them a bit of a beating as well after the way they beat us earlier on in the season when we were down to our bare bones. But that is the match preview, guys. Thank you everyone for joining us today. Me and Sim will be in the stadium with the game on tomorrow, 3 p.m. kickoff. Barnaby and Amir here with you in the studio. So please call in to the fan show after the game if you want to have your say. But yeah, that is it from us today. Like, subscribe and comment. And as always, come on you Spurs.